Secretary of State and acting White House National Security Advisor Marco Rubio now joins us. Mr. Secretary, I know it has been an intense few hours, but so far it does not appear that Iran has yet retaliated against the United States. What intelligence do you have at this point about their capabilities to respond, the intent of their proxies? Is there any kind of command and control structure left to activate them?
Yeah, well, we'll see what Iran decides to do. I think they should choose the route of peace. We've done everything. We have bent over backwards, okay, to create a deal with these people. Steve Witkoff has traveled the world extensively, met with them. Well, not even met with them, met through the Omanis with them and discussed back and forth. We even put an offer to them that they wanted elements of it in writing, and we offered it to them. Very generous offer, by the way. We've done it, and we're prepared right now. If they call right now and say, we want to meet, let's talk about this, we're prepared to do that. The president's made that clear from the very beginning. His preference is to deal with this issue diplomatically. But he also told them we had 60 days to make progress or something else was going to happen. And I think they thought they were dealing with a different kind of leader, like the kinds of leaders they've been playing games with for the last 30 or 40 years, and they found out that's not the case. So this mission was a very precise mission. It had 3 objectives, 3 nuclear sites. It was not an attack on Iran. It was not an attack on the Iranian people. This wasn't a regime change move. This was designed to degrade and or destroy 3 nuclear sites related to their nuclear weaponization ambitions, and that was delivered on yesterday. What happens next will now depend on what Iran chooses to do next. If they choose the path of diplomacy, we're ready. We can do a deal that's good for them, the Iranian people, and good for the world. Yeah. If they choose another route, then there'll be consequences for that.
Let me follow up on a phrase you just word, weaponization ambitions. Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not been made.
I know that better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons, because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question.
On
that's a question of intent. And you know, in the intelligence assessment, that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage. I'm talking about the public March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also an inaccurate
representation
of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%? If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon? Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the delivery mechanisms. They have the enrichment capability. They have the highly enriched uranium that is stored.
Yes.
That's all we need to see.
Well,
especially in the hands of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around. They are the source of all instability
and no one's
in the Middle East.
No one's disputing that. I'm not doing that here. And they were censured at the IAEA for that enrichment and for violating their non-proliferation agreements. I was simply asking if we had intelligence that there was an order to weaponize, because you said weaponization ambitions.
Well, we have intelligence that they have everything they need to build a nuclear weapon, and that's more than enough.
Okay. I want to ask you on the policy front. There are personnel throughout the Middle East from the United States, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in other bases. If those countries are attacked by Iran because of their association with the United States, will the United States defend them?
Well, that's exactly why they're there. That's a great point, actually. Do you know why we have bases in Bahrain and Qatar and UAE and all these places? All of those bases are there because those countries are afraid that Iran will attack them. If Iran was not a threat to the region, if the Iranian regime, because I'm talking about the Iranian people, the regime was not a threat to the region, we wouldn't have to have any of these bases. Those bases are there because those countries are petrified that that the Iranian Shia clerics that run that country will attack their countries.
Will the United States defend them if they are?
As you know, they've got a very difficult history. Well, that's why we're there. That's why we're there.
So
but
yes, we will defend them.
Is what they're threatening to do. So we'll defend our people, obviously. We'll defend our people. Well, they'll attack our bases, and those are our bases, and we're going to defend our personnel, and we're prepared to do that. But we'll do more than just defend. We'll impose costs on Iran if they attack American personnel, whether they do it directly or whether they do it through some of these proxies that they try to hide behind, and that includes the Houthis. Yeah. So another proxy of theirs. So, but let's hope they don't choose that route. Let's all hope that they actually decide, okay, let's go negotiate, because we want a diplomatic and peaceful solution. We have achieved our objectives. We're ready to negotiate this in a peaceful, diplomatic way. We've been prepared to do that for days. They are the ones that played games, as they have done for 40 years, as they have done to multiple presidents. They tried to play games with President Trump, and they see what happens. This is not a game-playing president. When he says he's going to do something, he will do it.
I hear you saying here you want to de-escalate when you are talking about diplomacy. You are looking for Iran to pick up that offer that was put on the table you mentioned by Steve Witkoff. Can you just clarify, does that mean the U.S. would still allow for Iran to have a civilian nuclear program if it does not enrich on its own soil?
But that's never been an issue. There's countries all over the world that have a civil nuclear
that's still
program.
The
no
offer
one here
on
is
the table?
saying that Iran can't. Sure, that's always been there. Any country in the world has a right to have a civil nuclear program. What they don't have a right to do is to enrich it at 60%, hide it under a mountain, and develop long-range and short-range and mid-range missiles and sponsor terrorist proxies all over the world. They don't have a right to do that. And that's what they've been doing. And no one's dealt with it. And it's continued to linger. And they've played games with multiple presidents and multiple countries around the world, and they've gotten away with it for 40-something years. This is very simple. The president wants to resolve this diplomatically and peacefully. He gave them a chance to do that. They delayed. They had all these kind of delay tactics. They wouldn't even meet with us directly. We had to go through third countries. This is very simple. Let's meet directly. Let's work on agreements that are good for Iran, good for the Iranian people in particular, good for the safety and security of the world and the United States. That's always been our preference. That continues to be our preference. But they're the ones that were playing games with us. And these are the consequences. We had to achieve those objectives. We had 3 objectives yesterday: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. We conducted a brilliant military operation under the command of President Trump, and obviously great credit to Secretary Hegseth and General Kurilla and General Kane and all the airmen and the phenomenal people in the U.S. military. No other military in the world could have done this.
No,
we've achieved those objectives. What happens next is up to the regime. Okay, the regime wants peace. We're ready for peace. They want to do something else. They're incredibly vulnerable. They can't even protect their own airspace.
Well, clearly they could not. But what is the U.S. assessment of how much nuclear material at those sites was moved prior to the attack? There has been talk for days about bombing of Fordow.
Well, look, we don't. No one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it, because you really can't move anything right now, and they can't move anything right now inside of Iran. I mean, the minute a truck starts driving somewhere, the Israelis have seen it and they've targeted it and taken it out. So our assessment is we have to assume that that's a lot of 60% enriched uranium buried deep under the ground there in Esfahan, and that really is the key. What they should do with that is they should bring it out of the ground and turn it over. Multiple countries around the world will take it and downblend it. That's what they should do with that. And what they should do is say, we're not going to have any enrichment capability in our country. Instead, what we're going to have is a civil nuclear program like dozens of countries around the world have, where we build reactors that create electricity and we import enriched material. And we've made very general, I'm not going to get all the details of the offers, but there are other avenues here that would be acceptable to them. If that's what they wanted, if what they want is a civil, peaceful nuclear program, the route has always been there. The problem is that everything they're demanding has nothing to do with a peaceful program. They are all the things you would want if you want to retain the option of one day weaponizing the program, which has been their clear intent. To me, that's indisputable. I followed this issue for 15 years, including the intelligence on it for 15 years. Okay, I have followed it. And the intelligence, these are assessments, and sometimes they've been wrong. I've seen them revised multiple times. These guys want a nuclear weapon one day.
Okay, to that point.
And it isn't going to happen. Not while Donald Trump is president.
Understood. You've said this is not about regime change, but you are describing a regime that you have said for decades, I mean, for upwards of 40 years, has chanted death to America, has done all the things you just described. Isn't a diplomatic deal with them a lifeline? Aren't you offering to negotiate with the same people you're saying did all these things? So therefore, are you actually looking for regime change?
that misses the point. I don't like that they chant those things, but one thing is that they chant those things. Another thing is that they chant those things and they have terror proxies are all over the world, and they have long-range missiles that can reach the United States one day, and they have the potential to be one step away from a nuclear weapon. Yeah, well, one day could be tomorrow, could be a week from now, could be a month from now. You know, all it takes is the flip of a switch. By the way, they're not going to broadcast that to the world. By the time we figure out that they're doing it, you have all the pieces in place, okay? It's like you have a gun here and the ammunition. It only takes 1 second. We have other targets that we could hit, but we achieved our objective. The primary targets we were interested in are the ones that were struck tonight in devastating fashion. The ones that were struck, I guess, yeah, tonight over there, their time, in devastating fashion, and we've achieved that objective. There are no planned military operations right now against Iran unless they mess around and they attack American or American interests. Then they're going to have a problem. And I'm not going to broadcast what those problems are, but suffice it to say, know this. The United States flew halfway around the world, right into the heart of Iran, over their most sensitive locations. These things got rocked. And then we left. And we were out of their airspace. We were over the ocean before they figured out what had happened. And there are plenty of other targets. We don't want to do that. That's not our preference. We want peace deals with them, and that's up to them to decide.
You said defend American interests. Would the United States military take action to keep, for example, the transit point, the Strait of Hormuz, open? If there are attacks on oil installations, would the United States consider that a direct act by the state, even if it was carried out by a militia?
Well, I'm not going to take options away from the president. That's not something we're talking about right now in terms of being immediate. But if they do that, the first people that should be angry about it are the Chinese government, because they take a lot of their oil comes through there. So they should be the first ones that are saying if they mine the Straits of Hormuz, the Chinese are going to pay a huge price. And every other country in the world is going to pay a huge price. We will too. It'll have some impact on us. It'll have a lot more impact on the rest of the world. A lot more impact on the rest of the world. It would be a suicidal move on their part, because I think the whole world would come against them if they did that.
Will the Chinese and Russians stop trading with Iran?
You have to ask the Chinese and the Russians.
You haven't
Probably
asked them?
not. I mean, they're getting, the Russians are getting a bunch of these, these drones that they're using are coming from Iran.
Exactly.
They're coming from Iran. So I saw the foreign minister, instead of meeting with Steve Witkoff, is headed to Moscow to meet with Putin, which was a pre-scheduled meeting, which is fine. You know, they can go meet. And, the Russians, at the end of the day, I mean, they buy drones from them. But look, this is very simple. We want to have an agreement with them, a diplomatic agreement in which they have a civil nuclear program but are not enriching and don't have weapons-grade material or weapons-grade capabilities laying around. That's that simple. That's our interest here. Who they trade with, who they deal with, those are other topics. Our objective here is very straightforward. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They're not even going to get close to a nuclear weapon. They're not even going to be in the neighborhood of a nuclear weapon, because these people are dangerous. This is a radical Shia clerics who run that country, and they are the source of all instability in the region, all of it. Without Iran and this regime, there is no Hamas, there is no Hezbollah. Well, because we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon.
Okay, but
that's the core objective. But I'm going through the things they've done, because that's why they can't have a nuclear weapon. Okay, they sponsor Shias. They sponsor these Shia militias, Hamas, Hezbollah, all these other terrorist groups. These people are never going to get anywhere close to a nuclear weapon. Not while Donald Trump is president. For
the Americans at home who are going, are we at war? You know, I'm trying to suss out some of the facts here. So why would Iran agree to any peace deal if the United States has already pulled out of one that they had, as President Trump did in 2018, and now has launched 2 surprise attacks? Both Israel and the United States have done so. There is such a massive trust deficit there. How could you possibly come to
but the trust deficit started with Iran.
I know.
Well, the trust deficit, the ones that shouldn't be trusted are the Iranians, because they're the ones that sponsor terrorism. Did they forewarn us before they blew up the embassy in Lebanon and killed over 200 American servicemen? Did they forewarn us before they built IEDs and blew the legs and arms off of American servicemen in Iraq? I mean, these are the people that are doing this forever. They're the ones that no one should trust. They're the ones that have lied about their nuclear program. They're the ones that have hidden things from the international organisms.
But that sounds like we're headed towards regime change, or the desire to get these people out of power.
No.
Are you?
No. A serious foreign policy is one that's focused on identifying what our national interest is. You don't have to like the regime. There are a lot of regimes around the world that we don't like, okay? But in this particular case, what we are focused on is not the changing of the regime. Okay, that's up to the Iranian people if they want to do that, but that's not what we're focused on. Our national interest is about one thing, and that is Iran not getting anywhere near the capability to weaponize and have nuclear weapons. They're not going to get anywhere near that capability. The president has made that clear from day one. Our preference for solving that problem, that very specific problem, is through diplomacy. We've said that. We've given it every opportunity. They played games. They tried delay tactics. They're trying delay tactics now on the Europeans because of the snapback provisions.
When did
and you
the
talk about the
president make
JCPOA,
this
that was a crazy deal.
When did the president make this decision? Because he said he was giving 2 more weeks of diplomacy on Friday, and on Friday, these jets took off.
Well, the president retains the opportunity to pull out of this at any moment, including 10 minutes before. But the president ordered options. Look, the decision, in my view, was made when he wrote a letter to the supreme leader, and he said, over the next 60 days, we want to do a deal with you and solve this problem of nuclear weaponization.
Yeah.
We want to do it peacefully.
Okay.
If after 60 days we don't see progress or it isn't solved, we have other alternatives.
Right.
He made that very clear. I think what some people
Mr.
are struggling with here is that we today have a president who does what he says he's going to do. And that's what happened here. And hopefully
Mr.
the Iranian
Secretary,
regime got that message.
We're going to hit a commercial break, so I have to wrap you there. Thank you very much for your time.